Hi everybody, welcome back to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel, and something a bit different today. We have actually got not one gun, but eagle-eyed viewers will have spotted there's two on the table. So we're actually going to review a pair. People who've watched the channel, subscribed, if you haven't, please make sure you do, will know that I'm a big B25 fan. We've only done one B25 first, and to give people a bit of an idea, if you don't know what a B25 is, it is the handmade masterpieces that Browning still produced today, although in very, very small numbers because they are hellishly expensive. The guns we're going to review today is a pair of Browning B2Gs. Now they're interesting in quite a few ways, which we'll move on to in a second. But the B2G is kind of, certainly for me, is the mainstay of the Browning B25, certainly here in the UK. From memory, this gun came out, I think, late 1960s, 65, 6, 7, 8, and it kind of sits in the middle of the very, very basic grades that have got no engraving on whatsoever, and then your much higher grades, non-side plated ones like D4G, D5Gs, etc. And what that did is it made them a very, very popular choice because they were affordable, but they also looked the part. So what we've got here, we've got a pair of 1998 B25 B2Gs. Now, these are what's called 206 sporters. Now, the 206 actually denotes the fact that they are 30-inch barrels and that they have got a 12mm rib on them. For example, if the 208 is a 32-inch with an 8mm rib and so on. So there's, with all the B2G sporting models, there's a number that follows on and it denotes what the width of the rib is and what the length of the barrels are. Don't ask me why, but that's what they did. Right. There's different types of pairs of shotguns. You can have what's called a matched pair. So if you go to the likes of, particularly today, you might go to Holland & Holland or Purdy or Bart or Wesley Richards or one of the top London gun makers. And what they would do is they would build you a pair of shotguns that would be completely matched. So in terms, not only in terms of dimensions, but I would imagine these days in terms of the barrel weights, but more importantly, the wood would come out of the same or very similar blank. They would be picked to match completely. Then you've got what's called a composed pair. So what people will do is they might have one gun of a particular make and model, and then they might try and source another one. And 9 times out of 10, they'll be the same make and model. They might have similar specifications, but the wood tends to not match. And also they are highly unlikely to have consecutive serial numbers. So what's interesting with these particular pair of Browning B2Gs is they are neither a composed pair or a matched pair. Now, without trying to confuse everybody watching this video, they are consecutive numbers. So by that, I mean they're running numbers. One ends in 9273 and one ends in 9272. So they are running in terms of the way they came off the production line. Okay, stay with me. They do both have 30-inch barrels. They were numbered 1 and 2 in gold, which we'll look at in a second, at Browning. They are factory numbered 1 and 2. So when you have a pair of guns, historically, they will be numbered on the top lever, the fore-end iron, and on the rib. The difference with these two guns is they are actually engraved by different engravers. So what would have happened is somebody will have bought these guns because they wanted to and they had consecutive numbers, but they weren't engraved by the same people, which makes them a consecutive but not a matched pair. I hope I've explained that. So these are 1998 30-inch B25 206 B2G sporters. So the B2G, so the B is the style of the engraving, okay? There was a B1, which we'll probably look at another time. There was a B2, but the G stands for Germanic because this gun was designed very much with the Europeans on the continent in mind. If you look at a gun that's built in Germany, like a Merkel or something, that they usually have very, very bold game scenes, very, very deep scroll. And traditionally, and I'm sure people in the UK will agree with this with me, you tend to find that a traditional English gun is much finer scroll, much finer game scenes. And that's why this gun was marketed primarily, or certainly built with the Europeans in mind, in my opinion. So the G is for Germanic, and they also did different models with the D4G and the D5G, which again, very, very deep. So the action itself, and we've talked about this with B25s before, They're very, very soft metal, so they're very customizable. So you'll notice on this particular gun, this is number 1, as you can see this kind of sheen. It's factory lacquer that's on the action. So the lacquer can sort of peel, scratch, rub off, but it's very, very easy to. But what it does is, of course, it protects the engraving, which is what it's there designed to do. So the B2G, we've got a nice game scene with the reeds. See that there? We've got ducks on one side, nice bit of border scroll, but nothing over the top. It's very understated. You know, I can remember back probably at the sort of period these guns were made and a little bit after. It was just the gun to have on a game shoot. You know, if you shot a B2G, then you understood the handling capabilities and the characteristics of these Belgian-made shotguns, and you got a really, really nice piece of kit to go out on a game day. Likewise, if you went on a clay shoot, it'd be less common, but people will go, "Oh, what's that?" And you, "Oh, it's B2G." Oh. Right. So there we go. On the underside, bit of border scroll engraved trigger guard, full tang. There we go, you've got the number 1 on the fore-end iron. And on the other side, just turn it over, we have got pheasants. We've got pheasants and ducks, the 12mm rib. Now factory, these would have been choked quarter, 3/4. Now these guns have been used as a pair for game shooting, but have been bored out to quarter, which is 10,000, something like that. And in addition, the sporting stocks have been converted to semi-pistol grip stocks, which again, it makes it kind of a crossover from what you get with a full pistol grip to a semi-pistol grip for going out and shooting game. With them being sporters and not game, they are £7, 12 ounces, which for me is the absolute perfect weight, because what you don't want, again, we're just talking about how modern game shooting's evolved. You don't want to be going out and shooting big loads now through a gun that weighs £6.5 pounds, because it's going to absolutely knock your teeth out, and you'll have a bigger dentist bill than you will the shoot day bill. £7, 12 ounces, stick 30, 32, 34 gram loads through it, absolutely no problem. But what you get with B25s and what people, sometimes overlook, and I think absolutely, I think younger shooters coming into the sport no doubt overlook these guns, because A1s in particular, which is the basic gun, which goes through the same manufacturing process as this gun, people don't know what they are. They don't appreciate what they are. They don't understand what they are. But if you look at this, £7, 12 ounces, okay, absolutely on the pin. You will not get a better handling gun than a Browning B25. And one of the reasons I want to show you these is because I want to educate people into understanding that these particular guns, A1s, B1s, B2Gs, can now be picked up for not a lot of money at all, and you are buying a handmade masterpiece. So we talked about these pair being a consecutive pair with the numbers 1 and 2. So there you've got there on the top lever, you've got number 1 there, number 1 on the rib, and on the underside you have got the number 1 on the fore-end iron. I've never quite understood with pairs of guns why they put number 1 on the fore-end iron. I can only assume it's when you go to pick one up and you know you've got the right gun, because ultimately it's on the bottom, and when you're shooting it, you've got your hand over the number. So it baffles me, but there it is. Completely hand engraved. Now, what I did mention is very interesting with these two guns. They're engraved by different engravers. Now, number 2 has had a little bit more use, and again, this is something that's very interesting with pairs. It's always, I've always thought was a bit odd. Whenever a pair of guns came through my hands, you'd always find that one had been shot to hell and well loved, and the other one had barely been out the cabinet. Whereas surely the idea of buying a pair is you go on double gun days and you shoot them exactly the same. However, from my experience, it's never been that way. It's always been that, oh, I really like this one, I'll just shoot this one. And that's just the way it is. Because of that, this particular gun, number 2, has had a bit more use than number 1. But what's very interesting with this, so gun number 2 has actually been engraved by master Browning engraver, Burton. Now, it's quite unusual to see a B2G, or a gun of this grade certainly, to be engraved by someone like that, because he worked on the much higher grade guns, sort of C grade and above, which again, hopefully I will bring you the C's and the D's in later reviews, so you can look at them and look and see the differences, and I can explain the differences to you. If you put the guns next to each other, you will see the difference in the engraving, because ultimately, when you have something that's hand engraved, it is all about the interpretation of the engraver that's looking at the photograph. And with stuff like this, you will absolutely no doubt see the differences. There's differences in the pheasant's wings. There's differences in where the rocks are and the reeds are and the size of the reeds and that, because it's all about, you know, what you're paying for. You're paying for somebody's inspiration to look at something and then take that and then put it onto the action. And there's going to be differences. And as a result of that, these two guns are slightly different in terms of the engraving, although both very, very well engraved. But the Burton one is knockout compared to the other one, and that is just how it is. So the fact that the engraving is the same scene but is different, again, points to the fact that when these guns were purchased, it might have been that they were purchased in a rush and we wanted a pair of guns and they didn't want to wait for 12, 18 months to have a pair that were engraved by the same engraver. I can only surmise. What I do know is, as I've said, these guns are exceptional in terms of their handling qualities and capabilities. And particularly with the longer barrels, you can also buy 32-inch sporters. They do a 20 gauge version, which is very nice. You might remember the B25 SP2010 that we reviewed previously. If you haven't seen the video, do check it out. And they've just, B25s as a whole have just kind of fell out of fashion a bit. And I think it's a crying shame, because they are just absolutely brilliant. I don't like to talk about figures, but if you wanted to buy a new pair of these guns today, you know, you're talking about the kind of money you use for a deposit on a house. That's how expensive they've got. Whereas if you look at what you can actually buy some for, they offer incredible value for money. Moving on to who will buy a pair of guns. Now, of course, the idea is that people will buy a pair of guns because they want to go double gunning on, you know, quite big game shoots. However, quite often in the past, I've come across things like father and son situations. They both shoot and they'd like to own the same gun, and then there's a nice little bit of prestige and a nice little bit of pride in having the same kind of gun as dad, and vice versa, same kind of gun as son. So, you know, that again is where pairs come in. And what nicer pair than a pair of B2Gs? So if you put them side by side or over and under, a little joke there, you'll see that the wood is different, because essentially what we've got two single guns that have been put together as a pair, but they just happen to be consecutive numbers. Now, this is typical of what you get. This is American walnut, B grade, as you would expect. The fore ends, Schnabel fore ends, got sliding fore end, which is standard B25 gear. But they're not, you know, they're not a bad match. There's a little bit more colour in this one, you could argue. But again, if you wanted to have these worked on by a gunsmith, you could get them absolutely spot on and get them as matched up as possible. And then you've got essentially a match pair just by changing the colour or the figure in the stock. We've already got the numbers, consecutive numbers, and we've already got all the 1 and 2 in gold. So, I mean, in terms of use, these guns have done very little work. The number 2 gun, which is the Burton engraved one, it's got a bit more signs of wear, you know, where the lacquer's sort of come off here and there, but they're absolutely bulletproof. I mean, these guns, what you've got to remember as well, when you go out with a pair of guns like this, it's all about you're shooting tradition, you're shooting heritage, because without John Moses Browning creating this, we wouldn't really have over and unders the way we do today. We wouldn't have the Miracuris, the Brownings, etc., because everybody essentially copied what John Moses Browning did. So there we have a lovely pair of completely handmade Browning B25 B2G 206 sporters. Anyone's got any comments or questions about these guns, please comment below. Please get in touch. Details are on the screen. I will do my absolute best to help you. And then if you are looking for a lovely pair of guns or a single gun, you've got to look at a B25, because they are just such good value. We're going to touch on that in some later videos as well, and hopefully I can bring you some more grades. But for now, that's it from me. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, I'll see you again on the next one. Thanks for watching.